بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Continuing on in our journey and our discussion of forsaking this world, what that means, what that entails, why that's so important. Imam Ghazāli, he stressed and he mentioned a number of different issues that he's going to re-emphasize inshallah in this chapter. This is actually the final chapter of this book. Inshallah, we'll be finishing Dhamm ad-Dunya. We'll probably finish this in maybe 2 to 3 weeks, inshallah, and then we'll be moving on to the next section of the next section, which is Kitab al-Dhamm al-Bukhl wal-Mal. So the reality of this world and how it is busying us in drowning in our dreams so that we forget ourselves, our Creator, where we came from, and where we are going. A very specific chapter title. in describing how this world is so distracting. Can somebody close that door? And how this world is distracting to us. So he says, know that this world is an expression of the presence of individual particulates. So he calls them ashya, or he calls them shay, and these particulars, or these very specific things, he's saying that these particular units, or these particulates that make up this world, this is actually what the world is. This is actually what the dunya is. And he said all of these things are the things that we as humankind, we share in, right? So all of these things are our shared experiences that we all take part in. And he said, and in order to preserve it, he must exert effort. So in order to keep this chair, in order to keep this clothing, in order to keep my car and my home, what do I need to do? I need to work for it, right? I need to make an effort for it. Some confuse this world as one of these 3 individual parts, and it is not so. So what are the 3 parts he's talking about? I'll express this and I'll clarify this, inshallah. So what is this world composed of? He said, so this world, it actually has 3 parts. The first is particulates, those specific things, right? Those individual units that he's talking about. He says our share of this world, right? That's also another component. And the third is the effort. So he said these are the 3 major components that make up this world. Part of the things, these particulates that he's talking about, so he says that this world is made up of 3 shay, right? This is made up of 3 ashya. What are these 3 things? He says minerals, plants, and animals. And he says our share is how much of each of these that we get, right? So what we have in this world. And then he talks about effort. Effort, he says, is for 3 things. It is seeking shelter. What else? Seeking food and clothing. So these are things that we've probably all heard, right? None of this stuff is new or particularly new information to us. But he said that these are the 3 things that we are all striving for, and all of the things that we're working for. And this actually becomes very central to the rest of this conversation. So the rest of the things that we're going to talk about, he talks about like a maskan, a malbas, and matam. And he said that these are the 3 things that we need to focus on, and these are the 3 things that actually will bring about a number of things that we need to be aware of. So he said the earth is composed of 3, like we mentioned before. He said minerals, plants, and animals, and mankind uses plants and animals for food and medicine. Right? This again, a lot of this information that we're going to be covering and talking about is probably not new to any of you. And then minerals, he said minerals are used for tools and vessels like copper and graphite. He says it's used for currency like gold and silver. Steel is used for other different types of tools. And there are different uses for all of these different types of minerals. He said animals. So animals can be used in different ways too. Animals can be used for consumption. They can be used for transport. Humans. So he said humans can be used as slaves, and sometimes they enslave others as a means of belittling them. Right. So they enslave others as a means of belittling them. wives and female slaves are used for enjoyment, and love of others. And basically what he's talking about is the different relationships that human beings have with one another. That's all he's expressing here. And why is it that he's able to express, this discussion of slaves? And the idea isn't to distill what these people are, right? That's not what the goal is here. He's just saying that ultimately what is taken from them, right? That what is the purpose behind many people involving themselves in this? So whether that be slavery of men or whether that be slavery of women, what is it that they are trying to seek from this? And the last of it, love of others. Loving others, and again, there's nothing wrong with loving others, but if I'm doing it for that sake because I want their recognition alone, this is where it becomes problematic, and this is where it becomes an issue. And he mentions here that it's expressed in the verse, and this is a verse that we had recited before, where he says, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ, that the love of desirable things is made alluring for men, women, children, right? Specifically, he mentions that. And he says this is the man. Right? So when he was talking about those different categories, he's saying that these are the things that are made alluring for him. The second one is وَالْقَنَاطِيرُ مُقَنْطَرَةٌ مِنَ الذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ, and he says gold and silver treasures piled up high. And what is this? This is precious metals and minerals. Again, these are many of the categories that he had mentioned previously. Also, وَالْخَيْلِ الْمُسَوَّمَةِ وَالْأَنْعَامِ, so he says horses with fine markings, livestock. He said this is cattle and animals, again, from the categories that he had mentioned previously. وَالْحَرْثِ, and finally, in farmland, and this is plants and crops. So he's showing that these 5 major categories are the motivations for mankind, and you will find that these are the things that distracts men from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, in these 5 or 10 or however many categories we want to put them in, these are the particulates of this world, right? These are the individual units that this world is composed of. So concerning the slave, there are 2 main relationships that he has. So when we talk about the abid, right, when we talk about the servant, the one who is trying to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are 2 main relationships that he has, that these things have to him, right? So the worldly things, what relationship do they have to him? There are 2, to his heart and to his body. And where does this come into play? He explains this. In his heart, he has a love of it, or he has his share in it, or he gives his full attention to it until he becomes the dunya's slave, right? So he becomes so distracted that all he does is he chases after this world and chases after this dunya. Or he describes it as an infatuated lover of it. And someone who's infatuated with something, what happens? Yes. Right, what happens? Why, when somebody is infatuated, why is it that they just go for it? What's happening? Yeah, right. It's like right. His judgment becomes clouded, right? His judgment becomes clouded, and this is like somewhat tangentially related, but it has to do when people are looking, like, so when young people are looking to get married, when they look to get married, what happens when they talk for too long? Huh? You don't know? Oh yeah, I'm scared that there too many people know. Huh? They get, okay, why? What happens? They become emotionally involved, right? We become emotionally involved. So when that relationship goes for too long, we become emotionally involved with this other person, and then what do? We get attached. So what happens then? It's harder to let go, meaning that am I making logical decisions at that point? No, I'm not. Why? Because I'm already clouded. My judgment has been clouded. And it's the same thing here. If I'm infatuated with the dunya, am I going to look at who I'm hurting? Am I look at who I'm going to overlook? Am I worried about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thinks? Right? So it's the same thing. I become so infatuated that all of the things that actually have an effect on my life, I'm willing to, there's this cognitive dissonance that happens where I'm completely willing to remove myself from those things. And it's similar with that. Like I remember, I know these guys, they make fun of me all the time. They're like, how long do you need to find out about someone if you're ready to marry them? I was like, within 2 weeks you should know if this is spouse material. And within 3 months you should be married. And that's just my personal timeline and what I believe. I could be wrong. Why? Because the thing is, when you're in that, like having a logical relationship, when I'm looking or I'm proposing to someone, there are maybe like 10 things 10 goals I'm looking for, right? and maybe some characteristics to go along with that. How long does that require? It's like, no, well, I still don't know his favorite color. Right, you know what I mean? And how important is that, fundamentally to the relationship? Because the thing is, the color that I love today, is it necessary that that's my favorite color in 5 years? No, right? Like we're always changing as people. Goals generally don't change. Like, I want to get to Jannah. I want someone who can help me get there. I want to seek, I want to learn more about my religion. Like, and these are lifelong journeys and lifelong goals, I think, that we all have. And if those are in place, okay, well, she's well-mannered, she's soft-spoken, she's, and like these are individual lists that everyone has. Like she treats elders well. Like, these are all things that we look for, and these are characteristics that we look for. And like, man, like you hit those check boxes, man. Come on, go for it. Like, there's no, Hail Mary. But it's like you you can't. There's obviously a balance between rushing into something, and I'm not saying to rush, because those decisions are very logical, and also unnecessarily delaying it so that our judgment doesn't get clouded. So characteristics of the heart, he describes the heart in different ways, in different expressions. He says that all of these things are ways that the heart is distracted because of the dunya. And he calls this the inner dunya. Yeah, because where's all the think about it? Why? Where's all this stuff happening? Right, it's happening in the heart. All of this stuff is happening in the heart. You can't. Jealousy doesn't manifest itself, right? Like, you don't start like sweating green, when you're jealous. Like, these aren't. You can see some expressions of that, and you can see symptoms of jealousy, right? But you can't look at someone and be like, yeah, he's jealous, and he's malicious, and he's cheap, right? Like, these aren't characteristics that physically appear on people, and this is why he calls this the inner dunya, right? This is why he calls these are inner characteristics that happen, and why do they happen? They happen because of this world, right? They happen because of this world, because of our relationship to it. If I love the dunya that someone else has, I'm what? All right, I'm going to be jealous, right? And all of these things are going to happen, right? And if you look at all of these things, why am I flattering other people? Why am I praising other people? Because what? I want them to think good of me, right? It's like, yeah, he's just always telling me how amazing I am, and right. And all of these things are they're ways for an individual to seek fame or to seek status. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. In the external dunya were all the things that we spoke about previously. Question? No. Okay. And what of the outer world? Like we said, it's the particulars that we already spoke about. It's the things that we already mentioned. So this world, right? Like all of these physical individual things, like these things, like this is the shared experience that we have. This is the world that we live in. So he said, using these tools to better his fortune and the fortune of others, this is what mankind busy themselves with. And what does he mean by this? He's saying that basically, this idea of food, clothing, and shelter, mankind was so busy in trying to improve it for themselves and improve it for others. This is why we have reached where we are today. And he'll mention his logic on why he believes that. So he says that there are a number of ties that an individual has and he creates, right? And there are some things that are tied to the heart, and there are some things that are tied to the body. So the things that are tied to the heart are through love, and the things that are tied to the body are through effort. And in order for us to protect ourselves, we must know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's the only way to actually stop these things. Right? If I want to prevent myself from falling into that excess and falling into the dunya, then I need to fill my heart with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, I need to know who? I need to know myself. If I don't know myself, I'll never be able to set those limits. I'll never be able to set those boundaries. And I also need to know the wisdom behind creation. Why? Okay, if that's the case, I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I love Him. I know myself. I know what my boundaries are. But if I don't understand why all of this is here, I'm not going to be able to use it correctly, even if I've set my own boundaries. So these things that make up this world, they're meant to feed a riding animal that takes him to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Most High. And he'll clarify this a little bit. And the riding animal that he's talking about is our body. He's basically saying the body is like a car. The body is a vehicle. And where is this vehicle supposed to take us? Huh? To Allah, right? This vehicle, if used properly, is supposed to take us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how do I fill this vehicle? How do I take care of this vehicle? Right? These are the things I need, right? I need food, drink, clothing, shelter, right? These are the things that I need. Without these things, will this vehicle get me to where I need to go? No, right? The vehicle is going to fail. I'm going to get like a lot of flat tires on the way, right? So I have to make sure that I'm doing the best to take up of this. And he'll give some clear examples and beneficial examples of that. So the example he gives is similar to how the Hajj, the one who makes Hajj, needs water, feed, and a saddle. So these things that the Hajji needs, the one who's making Hajj, he needs these things in order for him to make and complete the Hajj. So he says, if this individual, all he does is he focuses on feeding his camel, if all he does is focus on tying it and constantly cleaning it, if he keeps worrying about beautifying it, he keeps worrying about the shrubs that he's going to put on it and the shrubs that he's giving to it, and he gives it the best water, right? He's giving it ice water. He says, and then he doesn't realize that the caravan leaves without him. So now he's here with this beautiful, well cared for camel, and he's what? He's behind. He's by himself. And he's left himself open to what? To predators. Right? He's left himself over to predators. He's left himself open to highway robbers, right? The reason that people travel in a caravan is for safety, right? They want to be safe. There are other resources that they have that they can share with each other. When I'm left alone, I don't have access to any of those resources. What example is he giving here? What is he basically saying? And here the camel is a representation of what? Of the body. MashaAllah, good. And he gives the opposite example. He says, the Hajj who is aware. So what makes him different? He said he only cares to feed the camel what the camel needs to walk. Meaning that he's giving it just enough to keep it going. And he prepares it while his heart is tied to the Kaaba and the Hajj. He's worried about the camel, right? He has to be. But his focus is what? The Kaaba, right? That's his focus. Like, my goal is to get to the Kaaba. And this camel, I need it to get me where I'm trying to go, but it is not my sole focus. And he said, and this is similar to the one who's traveling to the next world, right? He doesn't busy himself with his bodily needs except for what is necessary. So he says, the things that enter and exit the stomach, these are the only things that really matter. And he said, so if I want to know the value of something, all I need to do is see how it exits. That's the true value of it, because it's all going to come in. It's going to come in the same way, regardless of how much that costs, right? So there's a difference between like a $1, a $10, and a $20 burger, right? We know that. But essentially, Ghazāli, his argument is like, yeah, but they're all going to come out the same way. And that's where you're going to see the value. You're not going to see the value in the consumption. Because we have to relieve ourselves, right? What happens if I don't relieve myself? I get what? Right, I get sick, right? It's an illness. It's a sickness when a person can't relieve themselves. So where does the value come in? He said, that's where the value is. Don't put things above what their actual value is. So the things that distracts man the most is his appetite. Not you? Yeah, you don't look it. Right? Is his appetite. And if we look at that and we explore it a little bit, we'll find that if an individual, and he had mentioned this before, when he talked about kasar shahwatain, when he talked about breaking the two desires, breaking the desire of the stomach and breaking the sexual desire, both of these things, the sexual desire he spent less time on. Why? If you can control the first one, it's easy to control the second. And that's why he didn't spend too much time on it. And he's saying the same thing here. He says, listen, if you can control your appetite, you can control other stuff very easily. As long as you don't overeat, these other shahwat, these other desires that we have, they can be easily controlled. So, and he likens this to this. Like he says that if a person who controls his desires, it's like he's standing in like a puddle of water versus someone who can't. He said this person is like drowning. Because the person who is in a shallow stream, he can still do what? He can still stand. He still has control. He has control in the direction, where he's going, what he's doing, and he can still benefit. He can still benefit from the water, right? If I'm drowning, am I going to worry about how much water I need to drink? Right? That's going to be the last thing on my mind. I'm going to worry about getting out of the water. But the person who has the control and the person who actually has direction, he has that much more control over what he wants to do. And how the water actually becomes beneficial for him at that point. He can use it to cool himself. He can use it to drink. Versus in this situation, it's only going to harm him. He's not worried about temperature, right? He's not worried about thirst. He's just worried about surviving. So why does one drown? What do you guys think? I'm sorry? Sure, sins is one of them. Why do we drown? Sure, like desires, for sure. I mean, there are different types of desires, right? I'm sorry? You go too deep, right? So you get infatuated, you get caught up, and all of these things are problematic. He actually mentions a number of reasons, and all of you are right. There's no like real wrong answer to this, but he says if we don't understand the reality of this world, if we're ignorant, then it becomes very easy to get caught up in our share of it. And what happens is that slowly, it's like once we get a nice car, so if we're working and we get a car, what do we start doing? We look for a nicer car, right? And the moment we get a nicer car, what do? Huh? You want to move back to the cheaper one, right? No. Huh? Right, you want to move on to the next one? And subhanAllah, the thing with the dunya is there's always going to be something what? Better. Always. There's always going to be something better. If it's not a car, it can be a yacht. If it's not a yacht, it could be a jet, right? There's so many ways to travel and to get around. And if we look, man, there's no had, right? There's no limit to any of these things. I could have the biggest house, and the next thing is like, man, it'd be so nice to have my own island. Right, you know what I mean? Like it just never ends, right? There's always going to be something bigger, always something going to be better, and this is how the dunya kind of, it just kind of reels us in with these small, we think they're small. It's like, a little bit nicer shoes, or a little bit nicer socks, a little bit nicer clothes, and it gets easy to get caught up in those things if I don't understand the value of these things, right? And that's what's important, and understand the purpose of these things. If I understand the purpose and the value of them, it's easier for me to utilize them. So what are some of the distractions? He says that these distractions have a number of causes behind them. He says that, and what do you think they are based off the first one? So food, shelter, good, and clothing. He said these are the three distractions of this world. He said essentially, these are the three distractions of this world. And food, why do we need it? Because we want to fill our appetites, and we need it to survive. He says clothing, it's to protect us from the hot and the cold. And he says shelter is to protect us for protection, right? From thieves or from, from harm and other things. So he says Allah did not create prepared goods for mankind as he did for animals. And I thought this was actually a really interesting point. He said animals, everything is what? Everything's ready. Like, you're never going to have like a cow like with grass and be like, nah, I need some cooked grass, right? This is not something that animals do. Animals can eat their food directly. There's no intermediary. There's nothing necessary between them and their food. Even shelter. Why don't they need shelter? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them the self-sustainability either in their skin or in their wool or whatever the case might be, that they don't need shelter, right? They don't need that type of protection. But mankind is very different, right? Mankind has to do all of these things. So he sums it down into 5. He said these are the 5 things mankind must do. Like these are necessary. In order for mankind to survive, they need to farm, they need to herd, they need to hunt, they need to sow, and they need to build. He said these are the 5 things. These are the 5 intermediary tools that mankind needs in order to survive. Unlike animals, right? Because they don't need to cook, they don't need to dress, and they don't need shelter. So mankind's needs are these 5. So he says, what are some of the things that stem from these needs? So farming brings us food. Herding brings us food and transport, right? Because we use animals to to ride on as well. Seeking, it allows us to hunt, it allows us to find minerals, oil, right? There's so many things that we look for through this ability to seek. Sewing, it allows us to dress, right? If we didn't sew, we wouldn't have clothing. And building, it gives us places to live. What do you guys think about his breakdown? Is that good? Right? It's pretty good. I mean, it's pretty good for 505, man. I gotta give it up, man. Like 900 years ago, he had a pretty good grasp on society and how society is structured and functions. So he says each of these things needs what? What do you think? Each of them require tools, right? In order for me to farm or to hunt or to sow or to, to build, I need tools, right? I need tools for those things. He says, and in order to gain an advantage over others, what are some other things I need? He says, I have to live in society. Why? Yeah, I don't know if you guys see where he's going with this. No, why do I need to be in society? Is it possible I know how to sow and hunt and farm and... Do you understand? Right? It's like, I mean, not everybody can be Faisal, mashallah. But, so, as an individual, I might be good at sewing, but I'm not good at farming, right? And I'm not good at hunting. I'm not good at all these things. But because I have a skill, what can I do with that skill? I can go to? I can trade it. But in order for me to trade, what do I need to do? I got to be around other people. So now he's slowly building his narrative. And I want you guys to follow what he does and how he circles it back. It's actually really clever. So why does he want to live in society? For two reasons. He wants, we all have a natural urge to live on. We want to have kids, right? We want to have children. We want our name to live on. And this is a very natural drive that we as humans have. And he said, secondly, we need to cooperate, right? Without cooperating, we won't get all of the things that we are looking for. So seeking harmony in society and organizing it as it becomes more intricate and complicated, right? As more people come together, we need more what? You need more organization, right? Because otherwise it just ends up being chaotic. And more organized we get, now we need what? You need people to organize. And he says this is how society is formed, right? Society is formed in this way. And he says with a need to those who will organize it, and because that it will be their focus, they need compensation as such. And these people we call them leaders or politicians. Right. All right. I'm sorry? Yeah, another layer of government. Yes, that's always the solution. So here you have people who are setting aside and dedicating their time to organize people and organize society. But if they're spending their full time doing it, they need what? All right, they need money. Otherwise, they won't be able to give time to organize. So some things that are notes of importance. Every vocation requires one who is qualified for it, meaning that somebody who sows should not be farming. Yes? No, he says munadham or something, like somebody like an organizer. But I don't think the meaning is very far off. Effectively, it's I think, unless you guys can think of a better one. I thought it was pretty clever. So every vocation requires one who's qualified, and in order to keep justice, there must be those who are pleased with little. This is a really interesting point that he brings up and makes. That if I want an effective society, the people who are organizing it should be what? They should be effective. And how does he define effectiveness, subhanAllah? Right? It's basically a altruistic, minimalist type person, right? This person does not want a lot. Meaning that people who are going into this position ideally should not be people who are seeking what? Right? They're not just status, not just power, but wealth. Right? They are satisfied with little. That these people who are organizing, they're not from the higher tiers of society. That these people actually aren't receiving that much compensation. They're receiving some, but they're not receiving a lot. So he says that this ultimately results in a three-strata society. What is this three stratas? He says the first, I'm not sure how he groups them, but or the reasoning behind it, I'm sorry. But he says here, he says the farmers, the herders, and the artisans. And then he says the soldiers, or the people who are involved in law enforcement. And he says the third, these are like between the two. And he says like these are like the laborers or the tax collectors. This group is like the most unskilled out of all of them. Right, this group here, the laborers and the tax collectors. And he closes with this. He says that basically society, it evolved from what? From three needs. And he said it is these three needs, not only did it build society, but these are the three needs that also corrupt the heart. And he's basically painting a picture for us like something as amazing as society can come from these three things. But at the same token, corruption also comes from those three things. And I think we'll stop here, inshallah. He starts talking about the different groups of people and how they respond and their reaction and interaction with these needs, bi'idhnillah, but we'll talk more about this, inshallah, next time. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin, nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Tafadhal. Clothing. Yeah. Any questions? Can you say that again? Yeah, so they can, right? They have the ability to corrupt.